Jesper Juul, thank you for taking the time to talk with us. There are plenty of parenting books on the bookshelves. What makes your book different?
I think the most important difference is that it was the first book that pointed out that raising children takes place between the lines. It's in the way that parents are living together, living with their children, communicating with them, and so on and so forth. Not what you do when you think, now I'm raising my child. It is not about what is good for children. It's not about what is good for their parents. It is what is good for everybody and for what takes place between them. We cannot use this old authoritarian way. We cannot go on treating children like we have been doing.
After reading Raising Competent Children, how will I be a different parent?
That is an interesting question, because a lot of people read the book hoping to learn something about their children, and they end up having learned a lot about themselves. What are we doing to our children when we do like this? And what are we doing when we do like this? And that is the most important, of course, for all parents to consider, as well as teachers. What are we imagining 20 years down the road? What kind of person would we like to see?
Most of us feel uncomfortable about the authoritarian parenting and teaching styles we grew up with. You argue that there is an alternative.
Let's start by making it very, very clear that from everything we know, children need leadership. And they need adult leadership from their parents, from their teachers, and so on. But they need a special quality of leadership in order to grow, develop, unfold as real people. And this is probably the most important question for parents. How do we exercise our leadership? If we do not want to repeat what our role models were doing, what can we then do? The alternative to authoritarian is to develop personal authority, that you are, as a parent, you're trustworthy. Not in the old days because you're consequent, but you're trustworthy as a person. And that makes teachers, as well as grandparents, as well as parents today, true pioneers, because they are trying to do something that is extremely difficult, because they're trying to become the kind of people that they were absolutely not raised to become. They were raised to be obedient, to adjust to authority, and now suddenly we discover that what we really need is to be much more authentic. One thing is that we are given a role as parents, but that doesn't mean that we have to act it like actors. It just means that we play an important part in the lives of our children. I would also like to say, to make plenty of mistakes. Do the best you can and find out which kind of parent would I like to be.
You say children want to cooperate. Most parents and educators certainly don't experience that every day. Children say no all the time. How do they cooperate?
It is strange that we overlook it, because it's not just that children want to cooperate. They are cooperating 99% of the time. If we take an example, let's say you live somewhere in Australia, you cannot have children, so you decide to adopt a child from Korea. This 1.5-year-old child will come to your home. He will think Korean, have Korean culture with him. Within a year, he's Australian. He thinks Australian, he speaks Australian, he plays with Australian children. That is a masterpiece of adaptation. Of course, they need, as we need, to take care of their own integrity. So sometimes they have to say no. It doesn't really mean that they don't want to do what you ask them to do, but it might have to do with the way you ask them. It's like a command. Most children hate that. 50 years ago it was different, because all parents were commanding. So as a child, you heard that all over the place. You say, okay, that's the way it is. The latest study I have seen tells us that children in all cultures say no to what the parents would like them to do. 65% of the time. So this idea that the perfect child is a child that says yes 100% of the time is an illusion. But it makes the world of a difference if you grow up with parents who are expecting you to cooperate, or if you grow up with parents who believe they have to force you to do it. And of course, the last style, which was the old style, is sending a very destructive message to the child.
We've all been brought up by parents and teachers who told us what to do and pointing out what we needed to do differently. If children don't need upbringing, what do they need from us?
Deciding what children need depends completely on your goals. Do you want a nice, sweet, obedient child that is always doing what you're saying? Or can you live with a feisty one who is also having it his own way? I can only say, if you want children to have a strong mental health, to have a very strong sense of what we call psychosocial competencies, they can live with themselves as they are and they can be with other people. Then we have to face the fact that our upbringing of children in families, in schools, in kindergartens, so far has not been successful. What we have achieved with the authoritarian style is we had as much power as it was possible. Second, we've had peace, so they were not disturbing us. As my parents said, children should be seen, not heard. I would like to point out an interesting parallel, because that was exactly how women were supposed to behave. Since then, women have made themselves heard. And so have the children, because children are born without history. They don't know that their father was raised in a different way. They just expect to be welcomed as they are.
You argue that children and young people can take responsibility for much more than we think.
Yeah, I would like to say that children understand responsibility as power. So what they say by the age of 2 or 3, how come you can decide that and why can I not decide that for myself? And this, of course, speaks to our wish or need for having power. So we say, that's because I'm your father. Boom, I decide. What they're really asking is, why can I not be responsible for the clothes I'm wearing, the amount of clothes I'm wearing, how my hair looks, when I do my homework, how I go to sleep? In a lot of areas, it is possible to hand over responsibility, because remember that nobody can actually be responsible for the life of another person. We are borrowing it from the children. We are saying, okay, I will now be responsible for your sleep. And when that leads to conflict, then one of the possibilities is to hand it over. Say, okay, I've been waking you up and it was a pleasure for me. It's not anymore. We argue, there's a bad atmosphere, and frankly, I have better things to do. So I'm sorry it took me so long to realize. So from today, it's your responsibility. Here you go. Thank you for letting me having it, and good luck. Many parents, especially with teenagers, believe that that will never work. The fact is that for teenagers especially, it is a relief that they become responsible for what has to do with their personal lives, their work, their sleep, their friends, so on and so forth. But it's a difficult subject because it touches everything we understand about adult power. And it is true that if we hand over some responsibility, we will lose some power. But we will also avoid a lot of power struggles. So take your pick.
Thank you very much for speaking with me today.